Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar, Don't Be a No-Show, Making the Most of Virtual Trade Shows. This online event is brought to you this morning by the MAPIT Alliance, or the Maryland Partners in International Trade. And I'm Rebecca Bellinger, the Executive Director of the Center for Global Business at the Robert H. Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland, College Park. And I will be serving as your moderator this morning. The topic of today's installment in this webinar series is virtual trade shows. We've heard some mixed reviews about the effectiveness of these events in connecting you with potential new customers, but virtual is the order of the day. So we're bringing today to you a couple of perspectives to help you make the most of these events. We'll also connect you with resources to help you participate in trade shows or more generally with your exporting goals. And I'd like to say thank you in advance to David Tone and Brad Stewart for being with us this morning to share their perspectives as a participant and as an organizer of these virtual trade shows. Before we dive into our agenda this morning, I'll take a minute to remind you of a few things to help us move smoothly through our event this morning. First, this webinar is being recorded. It will be made publicly available via our website and emailed out to all participants afterwards. We will handle questions via the chat function. Throughout the presentation, please feel free to send your questions to everyone, and we'll try to get through as many as we can in the order that they are received at the end of the presentation. As you close out of WebEx at the end, you'll see a pop-up window with a link to take our 2-minute survey about the webinar, and we appreciate your taking a few minutes to complete that for us. I'd also like to remind everyone to please keep your cameras off and your microphones on mute throughout the presentation. We will include contact information for all of the speakers in the final slide that you'll see later on. And finally, if there are any technical difficulties on our end or on yours, we thank you in advance for your patience. And so before we dive into the content of today's webinar, before I turn it over to our main speakers, I would like to take a minute to introduce the MAPIT Alliance, which is the sponsor and our partner for today's event. The MAPIT Alliance brings together key partners in industry, local, state, and federal government, and higher education in Maryland to raise awareness of existing export promotion programs, facilitate greater access to and usage of these resources, and build new collaborative, globally focused programs. You will hear from all of the partners this morning, the USIAC, the Maryland Department of Commerce, the university, and the District Export Council. And each of these partners will introduce their unit, their goals, their mission, and relevant resources to support you. So while all 4 of these partners exist as separate entities that you may or may not have worked with in the past, we all come together in this alliance to share information, collaborate on programming for the benefit of companies in Maryland, and to connect you with the vast network of other entities that support international trade at the local, state, and federal levels. Today's webinar is content that we have developed to support one specific piece of the exporting cycle or the exporting process. This graphic that you see before you was developed by MAPIT and is a useful tool in understanding the steps in exporting, and also shows you where in the process you might be if today's content is useful and relevant to your business. Since we're talking about trade shows, we're really talking about step 6 today, which is finding your customers abroad. And in future MAPIT webinars, we'll continue to reference this graphic. So now to talk more about finding your customers abroad via virtual trade shows, I'm going to turn it over now to David Tone. David.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to present. I see my audio is going. I had a little bit of technical hiccup just at that last minute. So I appreciate it. I'm speaking from the position as the executive chairman of Steer Technologies, which is a autonomous self-parking company out of Laurel, Maryland. Essentially, we retrofit a car, and then when you get out of the car at the mall, it will go troll the lot, find a parking spot and park itself. And then when you're done, you push a button on your phone and the car will come back to where it picked you up and away you go. And it's in the market right now. And we were presenting the Steer technology to the Air Force for a program they call AFWERX Fusion. which is their effort to engage with the startup and innovative communities outside of traditional DoD and intelligence community contract-based. And the way AFWERX approaches it is they throw out a challenge. And the challenge this time was the base of the future. They wanted to reimagine what an Air Force base would look like in the future. And they had 6 areas, and one of them was how can you leverage technology to improve operational efficiencies and effectiveness. And getting through the process is arduous. There are 1,900 companies that applied. Only 92 made it all the way through for selection. Steer was I'm happy to say, one of them. And normally it's a three-day conference out in Las Vegas, which we were very excited about until COVID hit. And so in the last 60 days, they pivoted to a virtual platform, and they ran the Base of the Future as a virtual conference. It's the first one we had engaged with. And my read on it was they were trying to figure out how to solve for virtual serendipity. How do you create the serendipitous engagement that you have in a normal trade show or conference where people get to meet and talk and engage? And I gave them great grades, particularly since it was such a last-minute pivot through the late spring, early summer as we got to it for July conference. Interestingly, in this conference, it had 2 purposes. One was to present, for each of the companies, to present their technology to potential Air Force buyers, so program managers and program executive officers that had a problem and money in a contract vehicle. And so present your technology and your value proposition. But they also had the specified task of promoting partnering and collaboration with other companies that have adjacent or technologies that could work together. And so with those 2 purposes in mind, it started with a lot of hard work, but kind of crammed in at the last minute. So instead of having actual pitches, we had to do a 5-minute live pre-recorded pitch, followed by a 10-minute Q&A session to the audience that was in there. And then they set up a video and then a virtual booth, and then outreach platforms using Slack and then chat rooms within the conference all the way through the 3-day event. And so our takeaways were the prep work matters, getting the video right for the virtual pitch and then a video that would sit in our virtual booth. That actually took a lot of prep work and about 3 weeks of thinking it through and storyboarding, getting our booth content proper, and all of that. So when we did the ramp up for the virtual conference, then it started, the actual conference opened up a day early for all the companies to get everything loaded up and to start working our way through the mechanics of it. And for this particular phase of the conference, there were about 600 companies total involved. And my takeaways from it was that virtual booths, I've got 4 key points. Virtual booths are hard. It's hard to capture the attention of someone when you're looking at a screen full of logos and you see that in the middle of this slide versus walking a convention floor where you understand very quickly what the company is, what it does, and if they're of interest to you based on the graphics and presentations in those physical booths. And so when you walk up and down the conference floor, go, okay, I know this, I know that, they're interesting, that's something I don't do. But when the virtual conference floor, the exhibit hall, is just a bunch of logos, and what you see is a screenshot of the logos, and they don't really give a hint of what you do, is really hard to get people to click on, particularly when they're listening to other stuff or they're multitasking in the office. And so your first takeaway is your logo or tagline needs to give a clear hint of what your company does and what its value proposition is, because that's probably the only way someone is going to see you is scrolling through a virtual exhibit hall like you see in the middle of the slide here. We proposed, but it was too late in the game, to allow looped GIFs in lieu of a flat logo to just, again, provide more information so that someone walking by or scrolling by would have an opportunity to say, oh, that's interesting, and click through to the booth itself, which is the screenshot on the right there, on the right side of the slide. Your booth content, if you can get them into the booth, needs to be a good mix of video, content that's engaging, easy to download PDFs they can take with, and then an ability to capture who they are and a way to reach back out to them. I will tell you that the booth content and the way it was presented with the platform that AFWERX used is what you see on the right side of the slide. It was wholly uninspiring and didn't really jazz anyone and was a real challenge. Now, during the conference, all of the exhibitors were sitting on a back Slack channel, all communicating with each other, and the amount of actual booth traffic we were getting was almost nil. Many companies had no one click through in the entire 3 days. And we had virtual booth manning hours, an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, where there was a Zoom window open and there was someone sitting there ready to ask questions. And almost all of the 300 plus presenters in our particular channel of the challenge had no booth traffic. I will tell you that we were lucky that we were effective in getting booth traffic for ours, and I'll walk through how that worked through. But the visual presentation of the booths, if you can get someone to click through the logo, and then having an engaging booth presence is critical if you're going to have that conversation that you're looking to have with customers. I just was through the Maryland Technology Council's Digital Transformation Conference yesterday, and the platform they were using for the booth was much better than what AFWERX uses, but I think they had a little bit more time to think it through. For your booth manning, they had hours where you had to have somebody in there with the master chat or with the ready to receive visitors. And then we recommended keeping your Zoom window open all times and having someone that's monitoring it. Now, the way we were able to drive traffic to our booth is on the main screen for the conference. AFWERX had 2 commentators, like news hosts, just talking through and engaging with the customers and with each other, with the attendees and with each other in between things like the keynotes and the panel. So there's always a running conversation, and the main keynotes were on the main screen when they were presenting. And then just to the right of that was a running chat window that anyone who is attending the conference could comment in there. And what we ended up doing is about every 10 minutes, we would put ticklers into the chat window. Hey, if you have this problem, come take a look at us. And other companies started to do that by the middle of the second day, but we just about every 10 minutes, because it's constantly scrolling, do you have this problem? Come talk to us. And we're able to actually get 2 customers who were in follow-on conversations for opportunities. They said, yes, I actually have that problem, and they click through to us on that piece. But it's all about awareness and staying in front of the customers, particularly when they're multitasking, particularly if they're looking at a panel where there's live content or a keynote speaker. I don't know if we're taking questions as we're going, but if not, if we can get the next slide, please. Thank you. The next takeaway, so 1 is get the prep right, 2 is get the logo so it really drives, 3 is be in that master chat window, and you see me double tap on that here. The third one, again, how do you stand out from a screen full of logos, is to be on a panel, to be somewhere where someone is talking. You can drop your company's name and really get your value proposition out more broadly. Now, AFWERX set it up where you could propose a panel with the moderator and the companies and the topic, and it was competitive on the issues and topics, and we jumped on that right away, and we proposed a panel, and we proposed a moderator, and it was accepted. And what you see here is a screenshot of how that panel played out. There's a couple of takeaways from this that I want to dive into. 1, if you can propose the moderator, that's really important, because the moderator can kind of manage the way the panel runs and ask the questions and kind of have a pre-written script of things and points that you want to bring out for your company, because again, you're in here to get traffic to start that follow-on conversation. And so we were able to structure the panel so that it was certainly objective and useful for everybody, but teed up questions or key points that we thought were important for steer. And then from just the simple things like our moderator consistently asked one of the other panelists first the question, and then asked Dr. Nujja Sanoker, our CEO, and you see her on the top right there. She was always the middle person to answer, so she had a chance to hear and think about the question, hear at least one response, and be able to tailor the response to what was being said. And then whoever was last typically only had a few minutes before they had to move to the next question. So that was carefully managed. The other thing is, when you are on a panel, have a professional background and show yourself as being a professional company. You can see our moderators working from home, that's the way it is, but the other 2 CEOs didn't present, in my opinion, a very professional background. One of them actually had people walking in and out of the frame. and weren't treating it like you're on a stage in a panel. So the takeaway here is get on a panel, get on a panel, get on a panel. When you're on the panel, use it to push your message, push your company, not in an obnoxious way, but really it's about awareness and drive people to, hey, you could maybe help me solve my problem, or you've given me something to think about. I want to reach out to you and continue the conversation. Again, no rocket science there. Then the last point is being on that active master chat window. Saw it with the conference where I was just in yesterday as well. It's really critical to put that out and to constantly keep your company's name and your value proposition in front of the audience in every way you can. Again, every 5 or 10 minutes. The one I was in, we were very successful by posing it as, do you have a problem? Here's a solution. That was more of a teaser. We saw others who were not effective saying, hi, my name is blank, even though their name was right above because they were posting. And this is what we do. If you have your teaser message about a customer and not about yourself, it's more engaging and will pull them in our experience. If you just say, here I am, this is what I do, come learn about it, that's not really as much of a draw in the experience that we had. And so we actually had one of our social media people actively monitoring this master chat, and then for each of the panels had those up as well, because a lot of the panels happened in parallel, and would drop in teasers in each of those as well, again, to try and drive traffic. So for all of this, we're able to get 2 very solid leads, and those are working. We're able to get the names here out there, our technologies out there. We're actually also partnering with 2 or 3 companies that were also presenters and offering up other proposals to the Air Force and U.S. government with some pretty cutting-edge combination of technologies. So we thought it was very successful, but there was a learning curve. And the path from just being a bump on the log with your website and your logo to actually driving traffic and starting conversations took some forethought, took a little bit of trial and error. And if you lean into it, it can be successful. If you just sit there, you're just a logo that someone's going to scroll past. And Rebecca, with that, I think that's my formal remarks, and I'm happy to turn it back to you and over to Brad.
Well, thank you, David. I appreciate it very much. And you covered some incredibly important points there, and I'll try and add a little bit onto that and maybe give a different perspective. So David talked about some of the great things you can do as a participant in a conference, a virtual conference, to be able to get not only attention, but to hopefully make connections with people and begin to hopefully build relationships with them. One of the other things that I think you want to think about is how this fits into your plan to begin to build some recognition for your company in places around the world or target markets that you're looking at. So that's one thing I'll try and cover here as I go through what I'm going to talk about. And so when this pandemic hit, not only did all of us end up with a multitude of consequences, but the conference world, where we spend a lot of time connecting with people and making those human-to-human connections that are important, sort of ceased to exist for the time being. I was asked to talk about that perspective from an organizer of a conference and sort of what we went through and how that can be helpful to you to understand our thinking and opportunities it may create for you. So I happen to chair, in addition to my other roles, I chair what's called the Bioinnovation Conference, which occurs here in Maryland. It occurs in October every year, and we have about 550 people who attend, primarily from Maryland, Virginia, D.C. So it's a fairly large conference. And when this happened and the decision was made to make it virtual, we had to reprocess how we were going to do that. And I think for us, starting with a frame of reference of how do we generate the greatest amount of value for our participants was front of mind. And in doing that, we began to, I put as my first bullet up here, rethink the way you're thinking or we were thinking. At first, I'll be quite honest, our response was, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We can't have this conference in person. How do we figure this out? So the initial response from a lot of conference organizers is that. It's how do we turn this into virtual? What sort of technology platform do we use? It's a lot of tactical things. But once we got those things out of the way and realized that we could handle it executionally, we began to think strategically to say, well, what new opportunities does this create for us? And one of the things we realized very rapidly is that it created a global opportunity for us. So even though our conference is physically based in Maryland and our participants were previously primarily from this area, our conference has really taken on a global focus, and we have attendees coming from literally around the globe to attend. And so I think one of the things is with a virtual conference, not only can the organizers but the participants think on a global basis and begin to reach out to people that you might physically never be able to connect with, or might spend days trying to travel to get in touch with them. And for us, we also realized that we could work to really diversify the cross-section of speakers and moderators and panelists that we had available. And David talked about how important it is to get involved with those sorts of things. For us, one of the challenges as a conference organizer is always, are people physically available where you are for an hour? Are they able to travel there? Or do they have other conflicts? It's now much easier to reach out to people around the globe and have them dial into a Zoom meeting for an hour. It doesn't require travel. They're in their home. It's easy to do. So for us, it allows the opportunity to have a much broader cross-section of panelists. So I think to put those two things together and give advice to everyone on this call, the organizers are really trying to figure out how to do this. They're really open for ideas. I think if you, as an attendee, can provide them with good questions or creative questions, ask them if X can occur, Y can occur, they're probably very happy for someone to give them suggestions about how to improve the conference. If you have people that are potential panelists or speakers, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to them and suggesting that to them. Creative ideas, David had mentioned previously when I spoke to him that their logo that they were using on their booth was a flat graphic, and they were able to create something that had movement in it. Those sorts of things aren't ones that typically the organizers are just so busy trying to pull together hundreds of pieces. They're happy for someone to reach out and say, hey, can I do this? Or would this be possible? Or I have this idea. Or would you consider, let's say you have a target market that is in Germany or China or somewhere else, would you consider inviting a trade group from that area? So those are all things that are easy to do, and you can think of ways you can apply your strategy and intentions and reach out to the conference organizer to see if they're willing to help you accomplish them. For us, for a technological perspective, I think it's important when we decided on what platform and things to use, some of the things we considered that might be helpful for you to know. It takes months to have these put into place. We had about a 4-month lead time, actually. And we made a lot of effort to choose a technological platform which could handle large volumes of people. The provider that we're working with has done conferences already with over 10,000 participants around the world. We've tried very hard to train participants on what their expectations should be, to send out pre-meeting information about how the system works, how they log into it. We've actually built our conferences in the biotechnology space, and we use the bio partnering platform, which is one that's used globally at biotechnology conferences. And we, even though our conference is a couple of weeks away, have already conducted a webinar to walk people through that bio partnering platform, which is how connections get made, meetings get scheduled, people showcase their technology. So we've already had at least one of those webinars already to help participants learn how to maximize the use of that system and how it functions and what sort of information gets attention for people in there. Additionally, we're also trying to be very considerate of the sponsors who help to fund the conference and think of creative ways to help them achieve their goals. Obviously, they have goals of trying to reach the participants. Some of them may be service providers. They may do a variety of different things, but we try to work creatively with them to come up with ideas on how we can help them meet their objectives also. Again, it's a two-way communication, so don't at all be afraid to reach out and make a suggestion or ask, or quite possibly it's something that can be done. Next slide, please. So I talked about a little bit about this, giving the attendees clear and concise information about what to expect. One of the things we really thought about is how we can keep people's attention. We all understand Zoom fatigue and staring at screens all day and going from one meeting to another. And as David mentioned, it's even harder now because you're doing all that probably from home. You're not at a conference where you're physically sort of out of town and you had nothing else to do there. So it is much more challenging. We sort of took that into mind, and originally our physical conference was a one-day conference that was fairly full. In the virtual world, we intentionally split it into 2 days. So it's really two half days. So we've kept the program half as long as each day, allowed multiple different types of opportunities for people to network with each other and connect. And then we've also extended the time period that people can network through the biopartnering platform that we use substantially. They can start registering in that 2 weeks before the conference, begin to make appointments with each other, arrange conversations, and then that will continue on after the conference. So we've really extended to almost a month the amount of time that people can utilize that system to ensure they have as many opportunities as possible to network and maximize the value of their time there. And additionally, I think it's very important to get people into the conference each day and get them started. So we've tried to make an effort to have an important keynote speaker each morning, sort of to get them transitioned into the conference being the focus of their day that day, and into the virtual world where they can meet with the exhibitors, connect with other people. From a presentation perspective, and this may be helpful for any of you who do get on panels during the conferences you may attend, it's critical to make sure the technology works. Most people now make the effort to have pre-meetings to run through the technology, make sure everyone understands how to work it. Want to make sure that the presenters and panelists understand how it works, how they can control it if they're going to present slides or someone else is going to do it, to make sure they understand how to access technical support during the program so that it's as seamless as possible. How questions get handled. As Rebecca mentioned earlier, there's a question and answer button in the bottom right-hand side here where you can submit questions. So making sure that people understand how to do that. And to make sure presenters have a clear expectation about how slides to be used versus FaceTime. One of the things you don't want to do is have people just staring at a never-changing slide for the entire time, or what could be even worse is having a stunningly complex PowerPoint slide, which would be difficult to understand if you were in the same meeting room looking at all the detail, but impossible to understand if you were in a virtual environment or even watching this on your phone. And then the last thing I think that it's important to let people know that are participating in these is not to expect the feedback they typically get from a typical conference. Most of the time, we're used to talking in person and may have hundreds or thousands of people in a room. And in a virtual environment, that doesn't happen. There's not going to be applause at the end. You're not going to have eye contact with people to get feedback on whether or not your joke was funny or the comment you made was relevant, or if they seem to have something they didn't understand. So as I describe it down here in the bottom, it's deafening silence sometimes. So it's important to give people a heads up that the environment that they're talking in will be different so that they can sort of adapt their expectations to be appropriate. With that, I'll turn it back over.
All right, and thank you so much, Brad. I'm Andrew Glass, and I'm a commercial officer with the Maryland U.S. Export Assistance Center. And first, just want to thank Rebecca for having me on this morning, as well as David and Brad for these tremendous insights. So, as I mentioned, I'm with the U.S. Export Assistance Center in Maryland, and we are part of the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service, which is part of the Department of Commerce. And what we do is help support U.S. jobs by promoting exports and attracting inward foreign investment. So really working with Maryland companies during this time where the paradigm of connecting with foreign partners and enabling their exports is changing. And we're here to kind of serve as your client service advocates here in Maryland. And right here, you can see a map that shows where we are in the world. We have representation in 76 countries and more than 90% of U.S. export markets. And we like to say we are located where you are in the U.S., so with 106 U.S. cities represented by our export assistance centers, as well as where you want to go in the world. And again, you can kind of see the breadth of our impact all over the globe there. And the red and purple dots are where we can actually deliver services for you as you think about your export markets. Next slide, please. And these are the friendly faces of the Baltimore U.S. Export Assistance Center. And there are 5 of us that cover different industries in Maryland, which means we go in depth to learn about the challenges and opportunities that are unique to your companies. And as you can see here, we have Paul, who's our acting director, focusing on aerospace and defense. We have folks focusing on healthcare, and then all the way to the right, there's me with education, travel, and tourism, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. Back one. And the main point I want to get across to you, and especially during these times where the paradigm of exporting is changing because you can't actually go to visit a market, is that we are here to accompany you on your export journey. And whether that be market intelligence, to conducting background checks on potential partners, to focusing on matchmaking overseas for you, or to promoting your products, and to helping you understand regulations and compliance. We're still here for you during this time when everything's changing, and we're adapting our services and what we can offer to Maryland companies to deal with this unique situation. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we are open for business with virtual export promotion services. And all of these things that you can see on the slide, the market intelligence, the virtual matchmaking, which is kind of a totally new paradigm for us, e-commerce review of your website, the due diligence on foreign parties, and of course, the ever popular webinar. We host a ton of those which you can access on our website, trade.gov, and all of these are available in a virtual format. And kind of the last thing I will leave you with, and something that's kind of interesting to think about, especially during these times, is dealing with low context versus high context cultures. And when I'm working with a client and I'm recommending a service, I think about this because in low context cultures, those are cultures where it's very easy to get across a message via explicit verbal communication. And that's much more difficult to work with high context cultures in a virtual environment, cultures that rely much more on in-person relationship building. So again, that's just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about an international export market, is if you're dealing with a low context culture or a high context culture, and then you'll be able to make decisions regarding, is a virtual option going to work for you, or is this something where you really feel like you need to be in person doing? So I'll just leave you with that. And my contact information is at the end of the presentation. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Jessica Reynolds with the Maryland Department of Commerce to share some resources from that entity.
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning. I am the Senior Director of the Office of International Investment and Trade at the Maryland Department of Commerce. So our office, similar to our federal partners at the UVAC, we are responsible for 3 goals. That is increasing exports from the state of Maryland, attracting foreign businesses to the state to create jobs, and marketing Maryland internationally. So today we're focused on assisting companies to export, specifically how you can attend some virtual trade shows, missions, or events, and continue your export efforts. So I'd like to go over our state programs that can support those activities. The primary program we have for Maryland businesses looking for financial support for their export goals is the ExportMD grant program. This program offers eligible Maryland companies up to $5,000 reimbursement towards their export marketing. Most companies have historically used the program for in-person trade shows and travel. Of course, during global pandemic, that's not realistic. So, companies are looking for other ways to utilize these funds, and we're also looking for ways to make the program more flexible. So I did want to point out that this program can be used for registration costs and marketing costs for virtual events and activities and trade shows. We've also been able to allow other non-event related activities such as digital marketing, such as placement of advertising in foreign markets, website globalization, compliance testing in foreign markets, shipping sample products, and export research. The program does include a 1/3 cost share by companies, so it is important to keep that in mind, and therefore the maximum expenses under this program are $7,500 with a maximum reimbursement of $5,000. This program is partially funded by the SBA through the STEP program that's provided to states, and they have also been able to quickly allow some increases in the caps and allowable expenses so that we can be more flexible during COVID-19 for our exporters. So a little bit about the application process. Companies do need to meet certain qualifications in order to be eligible, which are up on the slide here. Those are having business operations in Maryland, being in good standing with the state, in existence for at least 1 year, not receiving an ExportMD award in the past 12 months. Companies must be a small business as defined by the SBA, since they do partially fund this program. And of course, the activities must be eligible, focused in those areas towards export marketing. And in the event of digital advertising, digital marketing activities, the company does need to have an existing website. So in order to apply, companies would work with one of the regional managers in our office on their application through our online system. We accept applications on the 1st of every month and recommend companies begin the application process 1 month prior to the application deadline for non-travel grant activities and at least 2 months prior for any planned travel, just for future reference. The reason for this is there is a 1-month review period between the application deadline and the application award if a company is approved, and activities do need to take place after the award. So once we receive the application, the 1st of the month, the regional manager will give the application one final check through before it is sent out to our outside review committee, and companies can expect a response about the award by the 1st of the following month. So for example, if you had activities coming up in, let's see, what are we in? What month are we? No one knows anymore, right? We're in September. So if you had activities coming up in November, you would want to apply by October 1st, so that then during the month of October, the review period, you would hear about the award by November 1st, and then your activities from November 1st onward, if you received the award, would be covered. If you would need more time to be certain you have the award before beginning the activities or more time for planning, I would recommend you consider applying sooner than 1 month prior. We also, next slide, please. We do have other programs as well that can be relevant for these virtual events and activities. For example, we have what we call our FlexX program, which offers support to exporters through our 16 offices around the world. That service is for up to 20 hours of free consulting assistance towards market research, distributor partner searches, but also this could be used to support your efforts at virtual shows, missions, or events. For example, helping you to identify appropriate meetings or contacts and perhaps reaching out to set those up, depending on the office and what you're looking for. We call it FlexX because we do consider it flexible in terms of the scope. So certainly reach out to us if you are looking at something that is overseas and you think you might need assistance. For that program, qualifications are only that a company have business operations in Maryland and be in good standing with the state. And this program doesn't have any specific application process. You would just reach out to me. My contact information is at the end of the presentation, or anyone on our team, and we can get you connected with that and start the process. Next slide, please. As far as additional resources, we do typically offer some commerce-led trips to trade shows and missions for matchmaking and to help companies identify potential clients. Of course, at the moment, our in-person events have been canceled or postponed. At the moment, our next in-person trade shows are scheduled for April, and everything prior to that has been canceled or switched to virtual. But we did just this week receive approval from the SBA through the STEP program that I mentioned for 4 new programs that we are doing in lieu of the canceled events. One is for a trade show, Buyer Japan, in October. And we are also looking at virtual missions in Africa and Colombia in November. Both of those will be general in terms of industry and sector, where we will provide matchmaking. So it will be targeted for the individual company, but a wide range of industries are welcome. And then in February, we are looking at a virtual mission to Australia focused on aerospace and the space sector. So if anyone is interested in any of those, like I said, this is brand new information. We have not even put it up on our website yet. We haven't gotten the documents together, but we did just get confirmation that we are able to go forward with those this week. So feel free to reach out to me if you are interested in any of those as well, and I will connect you with our regional manager. So we will be doing those events, as well as typically we do also offer connections with overseas partners. Besides our foreign offices, we do partner with governments and similar business organizations overseas that we have regular relationships with, and we're always happy to leverage those for our clients. And of course, we do offer some support through other programs as well. The UVX programs and services, we do offer partial reimbursements and 2/3 reimbursement for those services when there's a fee, although at the moment many fees have been waived. And we also work with the Global Consulting Program at the Smith Center for Global Business. So with that, I will want to make sure I don't take too much time, and there's enough for wrap up of this. So I would like to introduce the chair of the District Export Council, Phil Grove, who is with Ellicott Dredges, but today representing the desk in that capacity. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jessica, and thank you to the other panelists and attendees for spending some time with us this morning. As Jessica mentioned, I'm Philip Grove, and I'm the chair of the Maryland, D.C. District Export Council, or the DEC. In my day job, I'm with Ellicott Dredges, based here in South Baltimore, and we are an exporter of Maryland-made machines all over the world. So in addition to being interested in the content of today's webinar as an exporter and learning how to navigate these new virtual environments myself, I'm also here to share with you how the DEC can help you. You've heard from a lot of people who can help you today, but the difference between us and some of the federal government, state government, is that the DEC is an organization that's made up of volunteer members who are all exporters, practitioners in the state of Maryland, and experts in our own field. So if you're not sure where to start, the DEC is somewhere you can come. We are hands-on professionals that are dedicating our free time, our volunteer free time, to counsel new to export companies or existing export companies that may have some challenges that they'd maybe like to run by some peers and see how there may be a experience handling, or if there's a recommended route to go based on, again, exporters' experience. Generally, the DEC reaches the community of Maryland through our website, www.mddcdec.com, where there's quite a bit of information on export essentials, basically similar to the wheel that you saw at the beginning of the presentation for the MAPIT Alliance. But also, usually we are hosting in-person how-to export type events. Obviously, this year has been different, so we've been conducting these MAPIT Alliance webinars, hoping to reach a broader audience and do what we can virtually. But along those lines, we are quite excited to announce that at the beginning of 2021, we are going to put on our signature event, Export Tech, virtually. Export Tech is a nationally recognized program developed by NIST, the National Institute of Science and Technology, that will coach new exporters or companies that are existing that want to take their products or services overseas with a 3-month program that really coaches you from your elevator pitch to how are you actually going to get your goods or services at the end user. So at the end of the program, you will have an export plan. So we're now taking applications for that program. Will start in January 2021. And I suggest you land on the DEC website, mddcdec.com, for more information or to apply for the program. So thank you again, and that's all I have for today.
Great. Thank you, Phil, and thank you everyone so far for your presentations. A lot of great questions have come in already. But before we turn to questions, I want to introduce a couple of the resources at the Center for Global Business. So CGB, or the Center for Global Business, is at the Robert H. Smith School of Business at the University of Park. We are the hub and driver of global activity at the school. Being that we are based at a university, we do focus on school internationalization, student programming, faculty development, thought leadership, and research. But we also, and this is an important piece for the Maryland business community, we do also focus on capacity building in trade for Maryland companies. And we are one of 15 nationally recognized centers and a recipient of the Title VI grant known as CYBR, administered by the U.S. Department of Education. And it's through this grant that many of our activities that reach out to the business community are supported. So there are two programs that I'll mention today very briefly. The first is the Maryland Global Consulting Program. If you are thinking ahead to spring, if you participate in a virtual trade show, or you have interest in finding new customers abroad, you have a pricing question or a challenge in market selection or market entry strategy, anything of this sort, you can work with a group of student consultants on addressing that challenge or finding a solution to your question. 100% of what the students will deliver to you is customized to you, your company, your data, your question. So how this program works. First, it is administered in partnership with the Maryland Department of Commerce, with Jessica's team. So first things first, you identify your question or your challenge. And then you work with the Maryland Department of Commerce and my team to scope your problem so that it can be something that is accessible to students that they could work on for you. And then we match you with a group of students here at the university. The students will work on your project throughout the semester under the supervision of a faculty member and embedded in a course that teaches students about consulting as a practice. So again, this is 100% customized to you, your company, your data, your challenges. And you as the company are involved in the scoping, the launch, the final presentation where you get your deliverables, and any other piece in the process along the way. So it's a great opportunity to have a group of highly talented business students address a question or a challenge that you're having. And we are right now accepting applications or inquiries for spring projects. We would love to hear from you by December 1st. And the website is here on the slide, and you can also contact me via my contact information that will be available at the end. The second program that I will mention, again, briefly here, is an educational one. The Smith School has launched a free web-based learning program for you, Maryland residents and small business owners, to help you navigate the economic effects of this pandemic. The program, again, it's a virtual program, is meant to address questions like, what marketing or brand strategy should I be focusing on in this virtual environment? Or what are the best practices in mitigating risk? It will also help you sharpen your key business skills related to strategy, accounting, financial decision-making, digital marketing. The format, again, is 100% virtual, and it occurs in 3 different courses that are broken up for you with 3 live webinars each. And the focus of those sessions or those webinars that are then broken up into 3 sessions are strategy, accounting, and digital marketing. From here, we have supplemented the main content with other supplemental webinars that are sprinkled throughout. And it is also an opportunity for you to launch into another course with the MicroMasters program if you are interested in looking more closely at digital marketing as an example. So all of the information about the program can be found on the website that you can see on the screen in front of you. Next up in the delivery is managerial accounting on September 22nd. And then designing website or your website for the best customer experience will happen on September 30th. So again, they're free skills building content sessions for you. Everything is being recorded. So if you missed something that started in July, you're welcome to check out the website and catch up as you would like to. So in sum, I think that we have some really great takeaways from today's content. So as I spend the next minute going through these top 10 takeaways for you from this webinar, I encourage you to go ahead, think of your questions and put them in the chat for us. So top 10 tips. If you are attending a virtual trade show, David mentioned some really great content tips for us. So first, in the directory, make sure that your logo, your tagline actually conveys what your company does. If you are manning a booth, make sure if you're manning it in person, make sure that you actually have someone there to do that. If your booth is not manned and it's a non-live and not interactive booth, it's really a great idea to have a button where you can press, someone can press and then talk to you or get someone in a chat box to engage, even if it is a stagnant kind of material. For all kinds of booths, whether they be in person or not, think about having a mix of content, video, downloadable PDFs, and very clear contact information. I think David has shared with us a couple of times in his presentation, get on a panel. It's really important to get your company out there in front of everyone participating and not just wait for people to come to your booth. So that's another great tip. And if there's a master chat room, make sure that you're providing content to address ask a question or provide a solution to a problem, and then link people back to your company as the way to address that problem. Brad shared content about what to do if you're organizing a virtual trade show for others. Make sure that attendees have a clear understanding, especially of how the technology works and how the whole event is going to work. Make sure you have a good search function so that attendees can appropriately find each other and other companies relevant to their operations. Make sure that there's plenty of time for networking. And make sure that your presenters and your panelists know how the technology works. I will also reiterate what Brad said, that when you are presenting, you don't get to see everybody's faces. You don't get to hear the applause or the laughter at the jokes, although Brad, I did laugh at your joke. So keep that in mind as you're working with presenters to help them prepare. So as promised, here are our questions. Or our contact information and questions that have come in so far. The first one I'm going to direct to Jessica and others if you have other input on this. So the first question is, can you recommend any upcoming, for example, in the next 3 months, any upcoming virtual conferences to engage with government buyers?
So for U.S. government buyers, I would not necessarily be the best person, but for foreign government buyers, there are often at, for example, international trade shows, depending on the sector, if foreign governments are buyers, then that they typically do participate. So, for example, the aerospace one where we are looking at Australia, I would imagine there would be some Australia government buyers at an event like that, if it's a show. In our case, it may be more of a mission versus a trade show itself, but aerospace shows do often have them. Trying to think what other sectors, energy shows would perhaps have government buyers as well. So the types of sectors where you would see government buyers are the ones where I would look. In the shows that we are participating in, we are not necessarily focused specifically on that apart from the aerospace shows, aerospace and defense. I don't know if Andrew Glass might have more ideas about events that are coming up broadly, like specific ones. I'm afraid I do not know offhand of a great one.
Yeah, well, us at the Department of Commerce, we have a great event actually coming up. It's a virtual event called Discover Global Markets, and it is from October 7th through the 9th. And what that actually, that event is specifically focused on advanced and intelligent manufacturing, but it is an opportunity to meet up via one-on-one sessions with representatives of government ministries from our participating countries. And I think we have over 30 countries who are signed up to participate. And again, you can schedule those one-on-one meetings with ministry officials, with other foreign participants, other companies who are participating in that virtual connection program. And I'm happy to send you more information about that. And maybe I can put the link in the chat as well to the website. But again, that's called the Discover Global Markets Conference. And I believe the sign-up fee is $125 through September 22nd. And that's just kind of an early bird discount. So please feel free to reach out to me if you'd like more information about that.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. That actually leads into a question that I'm going to pull together a lot of questions that have come in. People are asking about how and where you can find out about the virtual trade shows. So actually, David, if I can ask this question to you first, how did you find out about the trade show that you participated in? And then maybe we'll get some other answers as well as where these are being posted.
Sure thing. So we actively looked for the AFWERX piece from, we have insight into that customer and how they're trying to reach out to innovation and the startup community. So in that context, it was in our sector. It was a one-block move from where Steer is on market promotion. And then it offered some unique opportunities for Steer to penetrate what is otherwise a fairly Byzantine U.S. federal government contracting process. We did not realize it was going to be virtual when we started the process because COVID was still working its way through and the impacts for that. Once it went virtual, we did have a go, no-go discussion if it was worth continuing the process. And we said yes. And we're glad that we did because it was, again, very successful. I think in a broader sense, know who your customers are, know your sectors, and constantly look for what's out there on newsletters. There's a host of journals and media outlets, as well as industry groups and affinity groups that routinely put out newsletters and awareness of these kinds of events, and just be very, very attuned to what's coming out. I would say they'll also be very deliberate in which ones you choose to go to and which ones you choose not to, because they all take time and effort. And so understand what you think your ROI is going to be for attending, and also try and think through what's the opportunity cost of what you're not doing while you're prepping for them. Does that answer?
Yes, I think that's great. Brad, could you tell us where you have advertised the trade show you're organizing? Maybe that will also give us an insight into where people can find these.
Sure. So we've reached out to not only all the past attendees and sponsors, which would be very typical, but social media, LinkedIn, so people who are connected to each other learn about it. Additionally, because our target audience is within the biotechnology community, Maryland Life Sciences is the Maryland affiliate of the International Bio Organization, so through their channels. So for us, ours is an industry-focused event, so we've tried to reach out through the industry channels to participants around the world. As I said earlier in my remarks, if you were looking to export to a specific target market like Germany or China or someplace like that, it might be helpful to look not only within industry channels, such as the industry you work in, that are affiliated with that. Almost all trade associations have a national trade association for each industry. They're great sources of places to find ones that may be of interest to you, but also commerce and other places like that to connect directly with the countries.
Right. Okay. So we're hearing do your homework, search newsletters, be connected to your trade associations, get on mailing lists, and check out social media. And then Andrew Glass has presented a website, so I'm sure that this also is an indicator that anything that's government related will be available, including Maryland Department of Commerce. Trade shows will also be available on websites as well. So I'm going to move to the next question, and this one I'm also going to give to David. So one of our participants has said, I manned a virtual booth and tried to greet visitors in the chat as they were coming in, but then they would run away if I greeted them. So what is the best practice in this situation? So how do you greet and engage people as they're coming into your booth?
Sure. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry you had this traumatic event. I don't know if it's a best practice. I can just speak to what worked for us. When we were able to drive people into the virtual booth, they would pop up, and we would just, engage with remember this. So when we got to the virtual booth, they would pop up on the Zoom window as well. And we would just have one person, although we had like 5 or 6 people in different locations in that Zoom window. We had one person designated as the spokesperson, and then we had technical people behind them. And it was really just, hi, how are you? Is there anything we can help with? Or please tell me about yourself. The people that we drove that showed up came for a reason. So they clearly had already gone through the first threshold that they had a question or had an interest or a need. And so when they showed up, they were ready to engage. We did not have an experience that maybe the questioner is asking about where someone just meandered in. and then ran away because they were just kind of browsing and didn't understand, or were just trying to see what was behind the logo. Without knowing more, I can't say what best practices were, other than if you can entice people that if they have a problem, come see us, then they're primed to have that conversation versus, I mean, you've seen it on exhibit halls. People wander the booth, they look at stuff, they look at the adult trick-or-treating stuff that's out, and as soon as a booth person engages them, they're like, oh, I'm fine, and they run away. So it's really, they're there for a reason, and let them decide whether they want to engage. I don't know if that answers, but that's our experience.
Great. David, thank you. I do have one final question, so I hope you'll bear with us for the next couple of minutes as we close out after the final question. And this one actually is for Phil. Will virtual adaptations be part of the curriculum of Export Tech?
Sure, yeah, I can address that. Thank you, that's a good question. And the answer is yes. We have a curriculum committee who actually is meeting this afternoon, I believe, meets every 2 weeks. And on our last meeting 2 weeks ago, we discussed the need for the virtual angle to be part of every session. So we're not just going to have one virtual event or virtual subject like we have here today in the webinar, but every topic, whether it's about logistics or finance or whatnot, we're going to weave in some modern issues or current issues as far as adapting to pandemic conditions and also virtual. So the answer is yes, in a all-encompassing way.
Great, good. Thank you, Phil. And thank you to all of our presenters for being with us this morning. And thank you to all of you, the attendees, for joining us for this really important and very timely content. Please don't forget to take the survey as you close out of WebEx. It'll come in a pop-up window. And please do feel free to reach out to any of us with any of your questions. If you are struggling with how to find customers abroad, you have other questions about virtual trade shows or engaging virtually, we especially want to hear from you. So from the MAPIT Alliance, again, thank you so much for joining us today.